A big shout out to Cat Venturous Crochet, which is another YouTube channel that has the original pattern. I will also put the link in the description. Okay, let's get started on this cat collar and the materials that you will need. I purchased these colors, which made this pretty little cat collar, and had a button in my button box that I found that went with it. I got these cat face buttons at Walmart. Aren't they cute? So we are going to use a solid color today. I will show you how to change colors. This is Cotton Fair yarn. This is 317 yards, 3.5 ounces. You will not need nearly that much. It is a weight of 2. Fine, maybe a 3 would work. 52% cotton and 48% acrylic. All cotton may work as well. I'm using a 3.5 millimeter crochet hook for this tutorial. And there it is right there, 3.5 millimeters. You are also going to need your other materials such as scissors for cutting the ends and whatever else you need it for, stitch markers, and a wide-eyed needle with a blunt end, but I'm using the smaller wide-eyed needle since the yarn is very thin, and I can get it through that one as well as weave it through the material itself. As you see here, when you weave through, you want to make sure that the eye of the needle will fit through the yarn as you're weaving it in, whereas the wide-eyed needle, the wider eye, would get stuck. So just something you learn as you sew or crochet. Okay, if you haven't done this already, please measure the circumference of your kitty cat's neck. You'll measure the circumference and add 1/2 of an inch. This one that I made that you saw my kitty wearing is 12 inches, I believe. And then I'm going to probably make one 10 inches for this video. All right, we're going to start off with our slip knot. And if you're changing color, I suggest you leave a long tail. You can do so, or a solid color, but that will help you if you decide to put the edging on the inside of the collar. You'll already have a strand of yarn there to do that. And then on the other side, you can add another strand. Okay, so we're going to take our yarn with the tail to the right, wrap the yarn around your finger twice, and take that back piece of yarn and just bring it over the front piece, and then take that piece and bring it over your whole finger, and just put your hook in from behind and tighten it up. There you have your slip knot. All right, now you want to go ahead and chain stitch. And you want to go the length of your cat's neck circumference plus 1/2 inch. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a few chain stitches. And then I'll stop the camera and finish up and come back. So continue on. Now that you've reached your desired length for the collar, we're going to do a row of single crochets. We're going to go into the second chain from the hook. That's 1 and 2. And go ahead and insert your hook. Grab the yarn, pull it through, grab the yarn and go through 2. That's a single crochet. Now I'm going to go ahead and put a stitch marker under that single crochet. That just marks the beginning of that row. And sometimes it does help to use stitch markers. And I'm going to go ahead and just single crochet a few more, and you're going to need to single crochet all the way to the end. Here's another one. You just insert your hook, grab your yarn, bring it back through that chain, grab your yarn and go through the 2 loops on the hook. All right, so I want you to just finish doing single crochets all the way down to the end, and I will meet you at the end. And I've gotten down to the end. I'm going to do 1 more single crochet, and I'm going to show you how to change color if you so choose. Otherwise, you can continue on, and I'll explain how to do that as well. All right, so get your other color ready, and I'll show you how to change color. I'm going to go ahead and add the new color, show you how to do that. So you did your last single crochet, just loop your new color around and just pull it through. And you may have to tighten it up because it'll be a little bit loose. Just kind of pull on the yarn. You have to pull both colors to tighten it up, and then you're going to do a chain 1 to kind of keep it in place. And at this point you would follow the directions. I believe we're going to chain 4 for our next row. So you would just go ahead and do that. If you're doing a solid color, you're just going to chain 4. You're not going to add a new color. All right, so let's continue on. All right, we are continuing on. We're going to chain 4. This acts as like a double crochet plus a chain. We're going to turn our work, insert our hook into the 5th stitch, but we will be wrapping the yarn around the hook first. Count backwards. If you count the chains, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's the 5th stitch that you're actually going to be working into. So wrap the yarn around the hook, insert your hook under both pieces of yarn into that 5th stitch, pull up your yarn. I want to see if you can see it there. See the 2 pieces of yarn. All right, pull up your yarn, bring it back through. You now have 3 loops on the hook, and you're going to pull up your yarn again and go through 2 loops, pull up your yarn again and go through 2 loops. You've just created a V-stitch. It's what they call a V-stitch. And we're going to continue that all the way across. I'm going to do a few more. Now we're going to continue on with making V-stitches. And first we're going to introduce you to Powder. Oh, she's acting shy. Powder was a stray cat, and when I got her, she had a boo-boo on her ear, and I took her to the vet, and the vet said that's skin cancer. Unfortunately, we have to remove her ear, but she is doing just fine, except she's ignoring me right now. I think she wants another collar. All right, we're going to continue on, and we're going to make our V-stitches, and we're going to skip the next stitch, which is your single crochet stitch from the previous row. So skip that one, pull up your yarn, go into the next stitch, pull up your yarn, come back through, pull up your yarn, go through 2, and pull up your yarn, go through 2. Now you're going to chain 1 and do another double crochet in that same stitch that you just did that one. Pull up the yarn, go into that same stitch, pull up the yarn, come back through, pull up the yarn, go through 2, pull up the yarn, go through 2. You've just created your second V stitch. There's your first one and your second one. And we're going to skip the next stitch, and we're going to continue on. We're going to make another V stitch. Do a double crochet and do a chain 1 and another double crochet in that same spot. Now we've got another V-stitch, and we're going to skip the next one. We're going to do that to the end. Okay, I'm down to the end. I have 2 stitches left. I'm going to skip one and do my V-stitch in the last one where I've got my stitch marker. I'll just take that out and go ahead and do my V-stitch in that very last one. Do a double crochet and a chain 1 and 1 more double crochet. And if you're changing color, you will do it the same way I showed you before. And our row 3 is going to be puff stitches. So change your color here, secure it with a chain stitch as you change color, and we are going to do a chain 3 right here. There's 1, 2, and 3. Turn your work. We're going to start our puff stitches in the gap of each V-stitch. That's where your chain 1 was. So we're going to be working into the gaps of each V-stitch from that previous row. So watch closely. Pull up your yarn, go into that gap, pull up your yarn, bring it back through. Don't hold your yarn too tightly. Pull up the yarn and go back into the gap. Pull up the yarn, come back through. Pull up the yarn, go back into the gap. Pull up the yarn, come back through one more time. That should be a total of 4 times that you did this. All right, if you have to try to loosen it up, pull them up. And then you're going to pull up the yarn and you're going to go through all the loops on the hook. It's kind of hard to count them, but because, you know, there's like double there, but I think it's 6 or 7. 3, 4, 5, hard to count. Pull up your yarn, go through all of the loops on the hook. And if you've done this too tightly, it will be a little bit hard. And then we're going to do a chain 1 at the end here. But this is your puff stitch. We're going to be doing them all the way down to the end, and I will do another one for you. Okay, right here you want to make sure you do a chain 1, and that finishes off your puff stitch. All right, I'm going to slow this down a little bit. Pull up the yarn. Go into the V. This is your first one. Pull up the yarn, come back through. That's 1. Here's 2. And here's 3. And here's 4. All right, pull the yarn up so you can get the next piece of yarn through all of them. Pull it all the way through, and then you do a chain stitch to finish off that puff. There you have it. Now I'm going to speed this up a little bit, but I want you to continue making the puff stitches all the way down to the end, and I will meet you at the end. And that will be the end of our 3rd row. We're going to repeat all 3 rows again once we get down to the end here. Continue on. All right, I finished the puff stitch, the last puff stitch, and now we're going to do a double crochet before we turn and go down the next row, which will be a repeat of a single crochet, the single crochet row. So you want to go into the top of that chain stitch, which was part of the V-stitch when we first started that row. Wrap your yarn around, go into the top of that chain, pull your yarn through, and pull through 2 and pull through 2. Now you've done your double crochet, and the reason we did that was because we want it to match the other end. See how it looks there? You've got a double crochet there, or a chain stitch. Okay, let's go ahead and continue on. This is where you would change colors if you are changing colors. All right, now we're going to go ahead and do a chain 1 and turn our work, and we're going to do a row of single crochet. And if you want to do 2 rows of single crochet and finish off, you can do that, and the collar just won't be as wide. That's perfectly fine. So I want you to do single crochets at the top of each puff stitch and in between each puff stitch, a whole row of single crochet. So we're going to single crochet all the way across, starting with the second chain from the hook or the second stitch from the hook, then in top of the puff stitch and in between the puff stitches. So I'm counting 1, 2. I'm going to insert my hook under that stitch, which is not the top of the puff stitch, it's right next to it. Go ahead and do a single crochet. And I think I'm going to go ahead and add a stitch marker right here. Put it under both strands. And the next single crochet will be at the top of the puff stitch. So I'm going into the top of the puff stitch, do a single crochet, and then I'm going to go in between the puff stitches in that gap right there, not in the stitch itself, but in between them in the gap, and do another single crochet. And the next one will be the top of the puff stitch, which if you're looking at it, it does seem like the stitch is a little bit to the right of the puff stitch, and then you have the one that's in the gap. So go ahead and do that all the way across. I'll do one more, doing the top of the puff stitch, single crochet, and then a single crochet in the gap. All right, do that all the way to the end. When you're finishing off the single crochet row, make sure that you do your last single crochet in the top of the chain stitch on the previous row, right in here. And we'll just finish that off. Here we go. All right, there's the last single crochet. And we're going to do our V-stitches next. Go ahead and chain 4. And turn your work. Now I'm counting backwards to the 5th stitch, and you want to go ahead and do your double crochet to finish off the V, this first V, and don't go into the gap there, but make sure you do go underneath the actual stitch itself. If you have to use the point of the crochet hook, do that so you can go ahead and get it into the right place, and go ahead and do your double crochet. And this will be the end of that first V of that row. And you're going to skip the next stitch, and then you're going to do another V-stitch, which is a double crochet and a chain 1 and another double crochet in that same stitch. So go ahead and do that all the way down to the end, and I'll meet you at the end. Okay, I'm doing the last V-stitch for this row, and once you finish doing your V-stitch, you can change color if that's what you're doing, and we will chain 3, and we will turn our work, and we will do a row of puff stitches. And we're almost down to the end here where we can finish off and add our button. So I'm chaining 3 and I'm turning the work. And now we're going to continue on with the puff stitches. Yarn over, go into the gap, yarn over, come back through, yarn over, go into the gap, yarn over, come back through. You're doing this a total of 4 times, and you're going to make each puff stitch in the V-stitch gap. Make sure you pull the yarn all the way through all the loops on the hook. Don't hold your yarn too tightly. And then you do a chain stitch at the very end. Continue to the end, and I will meet you at the end. Do your double crochet in the last chain stitch after your last puff stitch. And after you do this, if you're changing colors, change color. Chain 1 and turn your work. And now we're going to do our single crochets. So I'm going to just go into the gap here, do a single crochet, and then I'm going to go above the puff stitch and do another single crochet. Go into the gap, do a single crochet, go on top of the puff stitch, and do another single crochet. And do that all the way down to the end. All right, I'm down to the end. I've got one more single crochet. And just going to do that in the top of the chain stitch. And here we go. There's one single crochet, chain 1, and turn my work. Now we're going to single crochet back, but we are going to do 2 single crochets right here. When we first start, we're going to do 2 single crochets in the same stitch at the beginning and 2 at the end, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, count 2 and go into that second chain. Do a single crochet. And do another one in that same spot. This will give the collar more of a point at the base. All right, now you just want to single crochet all the way across. Just continue on in every stitch. Okay, we have come down to the end, and make sure that you do 2 single crochets in your last stitch. Now we're going to just chain 1, take our scissors and cut the yarn, cut the umbilical cord, and then just pull that through. Just pull it through and that'll tighten it up. And now we're going to finish it off. Okay, you have your bottom and your top from where you first started. Where you first started is actually the top of the collar. And just put it down, just fold it down like that. And we're going to put the button on and show you how to make the little loop that goes around the button. So let's weave in our ends. Just go ahead and thread your needle. I'm just going to show you quickly how to weave in the end. And we have another kitty visiting us. It's kitty cat time. This is Merica. And she loves to be petted. She loves to be scratched. She's a sweet kitty. All right, we'll make you another collar too, kitty. All right, let's go ahead and push the needle where it will be hidden. Just push it through a couple of different places. Sometimes you want to go back and forth, maybe just 2 or 3 times until you feel it's secure. So I'm just going under a few pieces of yarn right here. Kitties are so much fun. All right, I'm just going to go back the other way and just make sure that I catch enough yarn in both directions so that when I cut it with the scissors, it won't come out. I think that might do it. Maybe one more. Uh-oh, somebody's leaving us. She gave up. All right, that should do it. That feels pretty secure. And that's all you do when you're weaving in your ends. Okay, we're going to sew the button onto the collar. I've cut a piece of yarn in half, or I've cut a piece of yarn and folded it in half, and I'll show you why in a minute. I'm going to take the button and place it on the collar where I believe it should go, and this particular button I think needs to go right there in that little hole, and I can sew through it easier. You have a little bit of the button jutting over. And you see where I have the ends. I put the ends through the needle, and then I had a loop at the end. And you'll see why I do that in just a second. Some people may already sew this way. I do this when I'm using thread as well. Okay, so I'm going to go into the back. I'm going to just grab up some of the thread, some of the yarn rather, go through that hole in the back, and then grab some of the yarn on the other side of the hole and just pull it through. Not all the way, just to where the loop comes up, and then I'm going to stick my needle right through that loop and then pull it tight. This way I don't have any stragglers and I don't have to weave them in or tie knots or anything like that. So it's already nice and tight. And so I'm going to do that again. And I'm just going to speed it up right here until I finish sewing in the button. Before I show you how to do the chain stitch for the loop for the button, I want to suggest to you that if you have a button somewhat like this green one here, rather than sewing this chain stitch, which I'm going to show you how to do in a minute, just go ahead and use that little gap right there between the stitches and just use that as your buttonhole. That'll make it a lot easier, because I do find it's hard to get the chain length exactly right to go around that button. So if you decided to make the chain stitch for your loop that goes around the button, you can attach a piece of yarn, or if you still have your tail from when you first started, you just go ahead and grab the yarn and pull it through, and you just do several chain stitches that fit the length that will go around the button. So once you have the length that you want, then you just pull the yarn all the way through, tighten it up, and get your needle, because you're going to sew it to the other end so that you'll make a loop, and just thread your needle. And once you have your needle threaded, you're just going to take the other end and you're just going to sew it together like so, and stop right there and just continue sewing until you get it nice and tight so it won't come out. I'm just speeding this up so you can kind of see quickly how I did to finish up sewing the loop. All right, I did have to redo my little chain loop because my cat button has ears and whiskers. So I had to give it a little bit of a gap in between the two ends there. Made it a little bit wider so it would fit over the ears and the whiskers, which it does, and it came out really cute. All right, there you have it. There's your cat collar. I hope you enjoyed making this cat collar and watching this video. And if so, please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching.